Welcome to another one of Innovation Visual's Digital Marketing Answered. I'm very happy to be joined with Clotilde Watson, our Performance Director.
Hello, hello.
Hello, Clotilde. So from the Innovation Visual team, Clotilde's been with the team for many years now, and thank you for coming on today. We're talking about one of the questions that's come up a number of times, which is what channels should people invest in to get the best digital marketing results?
Easy.
Yeah, I was going to say, are you ready for this?
I think so.
It is a very straightforward question, isn't it, in terms of, well, what should I invest in?
Yeah.
But I think to answer this question for everybody watching on YouTube and listening on the podcast, we probably need to go through and realize that there's some other questions that need to be asked first before we can get to the main course of that question. So, Clotilde, in terms of the starting point, kick us off. Where would you start if you had a new client coming to Innovation Visual and they're asking you with this question?
Yeah, so like you said, it sounds very straightforward, but I think there's loads that people might not realize that come into play when you have to decide. The main thing for me is data. So you have to start by looking at the data. What's your current data? So where is traffic coming from? Where is revenue coming from as well? And just have a look at that, what's working, what's not working. Then also, what are you trying to achieve? So what are your goals? Are you trying to get revenue fast, or are you trying to get new leads? Because different channels will work differently on that. Big, important one, who's your audience? So where do you target personas hang out online? Where do they spend their time? What countries are they from? What language do they speak? Because different countries, they might spend their time on different channels, different platforms. Another big one, I think, is budget. So how much money do you have?
Yeah.
Because, some platforms will cost more than others. Competitors can be a good one, although you have to be careful. So where are your competitors? Are there any channels that they're not on that you can get into? But yeah, as I said, I think we'll probably talk about it a bit later, but be careful, don't copy exactly what your competitors do, because you don't always know if it's working for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you answered one question with basically kind of probably 6 or 7 questions coming back. If we take the first of those and the question about data and what's working already, how do people understand what's going on, and what are there some key metrics by channel that people should be looking out for?
Well, it really depends on what you're trying to achieve here. So like I said, are you trying to get new leads? So if that's
I think broadly the audience, probably if we talk about sort of B2B as lead gen and we talk about B2C as e-commerce, and we look at those two as the patterns, there's a lot of people which fall somewhere, different places, like a B2C company looking for leads because it's a high value thing, and B2B looking to actually convert people directly online by the platform over the thing. But I think if we kind of split the discussion into those and use those as the two broad streams, I think that would help people.
Yeah, so I think if you look at B2B, the main thing for both, actually, for e-commerce and B2B, the main stuff you're going to look at is where traffic is coming from. So where are people coming from onto your website? Is it organic search? Do you do paid advertising, etc.? So have a look at where people come from, and then how they interact with the site. So do you have good engagement, for example? So GA4 has a new engagement rate metric, so you could look at that. So how long do they stay on the website? And then go on to the leads for B2B and the revenue for e-commerce. So it's great. So you might have loads of traffic coming from organic, but then if you don't get any money from it, there's not much point investing in that, or there might be a problem and then you need to fix so that you can maximize that traffic. So have a look at the different channels and see, how many people come in, and then are they converting? Are they engaging with the site?
So broadly, we're looking initially, when we're thinking about this channel investment, what's going on at the moment, where are the current people coming from, but they're going, well, it's not just about the people, where are the ones that are converting and giving you the revenue. So you could have half your traffic from paid, but you could have only 10% of your leads or revenue coming from paid.
And then you have and that's where you start asking questions. Well, actually, is paid the right channel? Or do I need to invest somewhere else? Or is there something that we're not doing well that actually we could improve, because we're getting all these traffic, but it's not turning into actual money? So what do we do with this? Can we improve conversion rate on the website? Can we improve our targeting and stuff like that? So we can start digging into what is causing this issue.
Okay. So I suppose that's the perfect kind of sort of example of why digital marketing is quite complex. It's not straightforward. It's not, it's clearly X or it's clearly Y from the data. So there's quite a lot to dig into specifically for each individual business to look in their data. Obviously, we haven't got time to dive into every single detail there, but you mentioned about budget becoming a question mark around the channel selection. Could you kind of talk a bit more about why the budget question is important when it comes to channel selection?
Well, because each channel will have a different cost. You have channels that are free, and I've put quote marks here because organic search, usually we say, organic is free. Well, it is in the sense that you don't have to pay, to show in the results, but you still have to pay some resources to create the content, to improve your website health, to do all the things that you need to do organically. You might need some budget to pay for some tools to check performance and stuff like that. So it's not exactly free.
You're right. You might be investing a lot in an agency like Innovation Visual, and they're focusing on SEO. Okay.
Absolutely. So it's resources and time for organic, for example. But paid advertising, Google ads, Facebook ads, LinkedIn ads, you all have to pay to play here. You have to pay for each click or for each impression. So it really depends on how much overall as a budget do you have. Do you have, what kind of resources do you have? Do you have an agency, or do you have some in-house staff? How many, how much are they going to work on this? And then do you have additional media spend to spend on platforms like Google and LinkedIn, etc., and how much?
So part of the budget question then becomes, are there areas where you don't have enough budget to play? So I'm thinking some of our clients in very competitive spaces don't play on paid because they don't have the budget to go and play with the really big, the huge multinationals that are spending vast sums. So they will say, well, I've got 10,000 a month, but this other person spending, $1 million a month, I'm not going to touch the side. So they would discount a channel from their deliberations. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, you might discount it, or you might play on it, but in a different way. So if it's Google ads, for example, you might decide, well, I'm not going to go after the obvious keywords, but I'm going to try small, like less known ones or kind of side ones that my competitors aren't on. But absolutely, it's like there's nothing worse for a business that they've got a small budget and then they try to put it on Google ads, and then you've got these massive competitors that just throw the money at it, and you just can't, it's that there are loads of criteria, for example, on Google ads on like quality, etc. So it's not just about the budget, but the budget is still a big thing.
Yeah.
So if your competitor is just throwing money at it, it's going to be quite hard. Also, there's this thing of, it's not getting cheaper. So I always say to a lot of my clients, invest in organic, because that's much more sustainable. That's for the long term.
Yeah.
Because if you just keep pushing money at advertising, we're seeing that the costs are increasing. Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, all of them, they're going up, they're not going down. Everyone's piling in there, so it's getting harder. It doesn't mean it doesn't work, and it can still work in some instances, but you have to be careful and you have to be strategic here, and just don't chucking money at it is not a sustainable way. And again, you might have another competitor who's got a bigger budget than you, and then they're just going to take it away. All that work that you've done, it's lost as soon as they start throwing money at it.
Right. Okay. So we're saying that the organic and a channel like that is more sustainable. So when we're deliberating between channels, it might look great if we're going on paid and we can deliver fast results, spending £10,000 a month and getting £50,000 a month back. This is fantastic, let's just keep spending. But what we're saying is, well, that's great, but what happens when the competitor comes along with deeper pockets and sucks away all of that traffic and all of those potential customers for you?
Absolutely, yeah. You don't want to have all your eggs in the same basket, and you want to make sure you've got different channels, and also they don't do the same thing. So like I said, organic, it's more long term. So usually when we work with clients, we'll start, like you said, let's put, if you've got a bit of budget, let's put some budget against paid so that we get you the leads, we get you the revenue now. But in the background, let's work on organic so that we're building that for the long term, so that then you're not completely reliant on paid. Because like you said, if there's a competitor that comes in, something happens in the market, Google decides that, no, you can't advertise on this term anymore because it's dangerous, or
we've
it's
seen that
weird.
before, haven't we?
Absolutely, and then you're stuffed. What do you do? Or something that's happened as well in the past, your website might have an issue or something like that, and then you can't advertise for some reason, or there's some problem, or you don't have all the budget all of a sudden, and then you're just losing all these leads. So you need to be very careful. If there's only one channel that's bringing you leads, I'd say be very careful and try to diversify, because you never know what's going to happen.
So an absolute slam dunk from this discussion is, don't just rely on one channel, even if it seems to be the channel at this point.
It's very dangerous. Yeah. Because in digital marketing, things change so fast. You don't know what's going to happen. You can have ideas and see how things pan out, but it's you can't predict everything. So all of a sudden Google releases a new algorithm update or something like that, and then that's it.
And it can be just the same if you're getting all your traffic from organic, and and Google says, well, actually we've evolved the algorithm and now your site isn't quite as flavor of the month as it was.
Absolutely.
Within working on a channel, one of the things is we always make sure that we're working not only within the best practice guidelines, but we're working across different areas of the best practice guideline, so that if one area of the algorithm gets more up-weighted or down-weighted, the client's numbers don't plummet, I suppose, is the
absolutely.
So diversification, even within a channel. So like with paid, and I know we've seen this before, things like financial keywords falling under the remit of then needing to have certain certifications and going through exercise of that. If you're only on a very narrow band of keywords and they're all fall into the bucket of, well, now you need, I don't know, you need to validate yourself, certify yourself, or whatever it may be, or deemed inappropriate, whatever it might be. Your stuff. But if you've got a wider scope of keywords, even if some of those aren't as high performing, you're at least hedging your bets. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And a great example of this as well, Facebook are really good at doing that. They'll just disapprove your ads for no reason. And they'll say things like, oh, you've done something bad and stuff like that. And then when you get in touch with them, they just review it and then they just reapprove it. but the time in between, because I can tell you it's really hard to get in touch with Facebook. They do not make it easy. But the time in between, you're not running anything, because their system, they use AI, and Google in a way, they do use AI as well. So the system flags something for a random reason. Even if your ads are fine, you cannot run them. So it can be very dangerous, because if you're only getting leads from Facebook, and then that, you know, that's off for like 2 weeks, that's a long time.
I've certainly seen this in the medical sphere. Sites getting flagged, like maternity area, suddenly getting flagged as deeply inappropriate, because the AI looked at it and gone, well, there's some words here which are quite outrageous, and they're being used in a medical sense, but it's putting it into a different bucket, should we say. So okay, really interesting that. So you also touched upon about goals and the strategy and doing things long-term, short-term. A lot of the people that you develop strategies for come in, and I know they're very much in a growth phase, and we've got to go fast. So could you just sort of run through the broad channel choices in terms of when you want some fast results? So somebody comes to you and says that, what's the kind of approach in terms of how do you do something fast and then balance it maybe with those more medium-term goals?
Yeah, I think that's what I was saying. Usually fast, just use paid, because you pay some money, you get the traffic. Hopefully, if your website's good, you get the leads, you know, if your targeting's good. So paid is really the main way to get stuff fast, you know, get the results fast. But like I said before, don't just be like, oh, okay, let's just put everything on paid now and we can worry about organic later. No. just still do some organic in the background, because the results can be amazing. And yes, it will take time, so you're not going to get the leads straight away. But we're seeing that with a lot of our clients. We started with paid because they were like, oh, we really need leads and revenue. So like, let's do some nice, good paid advertising campaigns, but let's build your organic in the background. And now, you know, some of them, maybe 9 months, a year and a half, depending on the clients later, you start seeing that, you know, the paid is there, but then the organic is kind of starting, you know, and then you're at a point where, great, we're getting consistent leads through organic. It's great. It's a great channel. It's working really well. And then you can build on that and increase. Whereas paid, it's quite hard to build on it, because once that's your budget, you know, unless you throw more money at it, it's really hard to build on that. And it's even with paid, what we're seeing actually is that you're getting less for your budget these days, because the cost per clicks are increasing massively. So actually the same budget between 2 years, you're getting less leads, less revenue.
And even when there've been, you know, economic downturns and there's a bit less investment, the general trend, those dips down are insignificant in terms of looking at the general trend of bid inflation. So the flip side is, if people are happy to be patient, they should be investing in what, organic? Is it sort of organic social as well, or would you say that's
Yeah, and again, it depends. So organic social is an interesting one, because it's really hard to get leads and revenue from organic social when you start, and you really have to invest. So again, that's a great example, actually, organic social, of a free channel. But actually, it's not really free, because you really need to be consistent. You need really to have someone taking care of the channel, especially if you've got different channels as well. You have to be conversational, you have to be engaged for it to really work. So it's really a lot of investment in time. And also think about it, well, okay, you're on Facebook, you're on Twitter, whatever. What are you sharing with these people? Do you have any content you can share? Because if you don't have anything, you know, what are you talking about? So that's the thing, you need to create the content. So it goes hand in hand with the organic, because if you create content for organic, then you can reuse it for like social, and so push it. You can use it for your paid, so it all kind of works together. But definitely, if you've got a bit more time and you just want to invest for the future, you're not into the massive growth straight away. So we have a client like that where they were like, oh, we can't grow too fast because otherwise we won't have enough people to service the clients. So that's also a problem. You don't want to kind of like go crazy with the leads and revenue, and then the client's like, oh, I can't deal with this. So organic is great because then you start building, and you can identify which areas you want more business from, for example, and then focus on the specific keywords. But also, I'd say, so we haven't talked about email.
Yeah.
Email is super important, and it's one of the best channels. You can get amazing revenues, amazing results.
Yeah.
And email is really the nurture of all these leads that you're getting. So you're just then nurturing them and making sure that you're giving them like helpful content. And so if you're B2B, it's probably going to be a bit longer. So you really need to nurture them, move them down the funnel.
Yeah.
And if you're e-commerce, it's like, well, if they've purchased from you, it's like keeping the loyalty and keeping them engaged and getting the second purchase and the third purchase. Yeah. So really that kind of glues everything together, because you don't want to be like, oh, I've got all these leads or all this revenue from paid or from organic, but then what do you do with that? What happens after that?
And I suppose also that's using email in that way as a way of preserving some of the value in that paid spend, because if you can get their email address and start sending them useful content and engage with them, you actually then have you're building more asset value, if you like, in terms of what you've done, the investment, because otherwise paid is literally that expense, isn't it? That's how much you've spent that month. What did you get in? Okay, that's it. Spend some more next month. And so email becomes that kind of should we say value retainer.
Extend the value. So that's the lifetime customer value. That's super important, because they might buy from you once, but what if they buy from you 10 times, or what if they get that bigger contract, or they stay longer? That's so much more valuable. And like you said, you've spent a certain amount of money, you want to maximize it, you want to make sure you get as much ROI as possible from it. So keeping in touch with these people and making them come back to your website and being helpful. And then they'll probably become advocates as well. So that's the next step. If they love what you do, then you get these people talking for you and getting the leads and the revenue for you as well, which is amazing. That's where every marketer wants to get to.
I mean, in some ways, should we call email anymore? Or should we call email something like customer engagement? Because actually, from our use across platforms like Klaviyo and HubSpot, that we're also using things like SMS and WhatsApp within the system. So it's not just email now, is it? It's messaging. And also within that, to make that work, it's the technology of the personalization. So that's a really interesting one, that actually, one of the most important channels, maybe we should term it customer engagement. And it's, email is maybe the channel identifier in your GA, but there's probably other stuff coming in. I know WhatsApp's, it's not going to be tracked as anything direct.
It's usually tracked as direct because it's encrypted. But you're right. And I don't know if I'd call it customer engagement, because with an email, you might have, if you're B2B, you might have nurturers, so not customers yet, but it's still on there. So to me, it's what happens once they've done a conversion on your website. So whether they've purchased and then they're a customer, or they've downloaded something, so you've got their email address, it's what happens then. And you can keep using, so you can do remarketing on paid, and then you can do, they might search again on organic, so they might find you again. But it's that email and all these other channels. That's how do you get back in touch. And it's so powerful, because email or SMS, they've given consent. They're happy for you to get in touch with them. So that, I mean, that's amazing, right? They've been like, yeah, sure, I'd like to hear from you. So don't mess this up. But but yeah, it's very powerful.
Pressure's on there. Yeah. Okay. Just taking a slightly different track, we talked about what happens like early on, looking back at the data set that you've got, and we've now started talking about quite a lot of different things. So in terms of evaluating something that maybe people listening or watching haven't done before, so they're looking at what they're doing, and they've heard what you said, they're going, oh wow, I don't know, we're spending all this money on paid, we're not getting traffic from somewhere else, we should really look at some other things. How do they go about maybe experimenting and testing?
Yeah, so well, especially if you don't have anything in place, that's quite hard, right? Because it's a bit of a leap of faith. And you have to accept, it's funny because digital marketing people think, oh, well, you've got all the data, you can make all the decisions from the data, it's fine, like, you know, you should know exactly how much you put in and how much you get out. But actually, the more you dig into it, it's not exactly, it's better than TV advertising where you don't really get much data, but it's still not 100%.
Yeah.
And you still have sometimes to take risks. Like everything in life, you have to take a bit of a risk, but there are things you can do. So the main thing I'd say for like, if you want to look at a new channel, is go back to the basics of marketing about your audience. So who you're trying to sell to, who are these people? So you should have personas drawn up with like, you might have their demographics and stuff like that, but that's not the main thing. You want to know what's their pain point, what's their challenge, what are they struggling with that I can help them. Okay. And so once you know that, you can try and figure out, well, where do they go online? Do they go, so if you look at social media, for example, do they go on TikTok? Do they go on LinkedIn? Do they go on Pinterest? Whatever. Yeah. And why do they go there as well? So why do they go on this channel? Because all these channels are very different. So Pinterest, for example, people tend to go there for inspiration. So they'll go, oh, I want to get a recipe of something. You know, I've got this in my fridge. I want to try a recipe, or I want
different wallpaper.
Wallpapers.
We love talking about your wallpaper, Clotilde.
Yes. But exactly. So I went on Pinterest to kind of find ideas and stuff like that. So, or fashion, you know, people want to find ideas, but it's all about inspiration. So depending on what you're selling, you know, and what kind of content you're going to push on there, you need to be really understand, well, why do they go on there? Because LinkedIn, same thing, you know, why do people go on LinkedIn? It's more professional usually, although some people might argue like it's starting to get a bit like Facebook, but that's a different discussion. But it's really understanding, where do they go and why do they go? Is this going to fit with what we're trying to do?
Right. So back to marketing 101, look at the basics, get the engagement. And then what we're going to go from there is then when you go, the audience is here, they're open as well, because it might be, you know, people need to have them to be open to the communication. Yeah. And then so you've got some ideas of what you do, and then go for it, start using it.
Well, yeah, you're going to have to test. So you need to collect some data here. And that's the really important thing. So make sure you've got everything set up so that you can collect the data, so that then you can figure out, well, did this work? Did this not work? Because the worst thing is, oh yeah, let's put some budget aside. Like you go ask your boss or something, and then the boss like, oh, how did it work? Oh, I don't know. That's really bad. So yeah, just make sure you've got all the tracking in place. Make sure you really understand how the platform works as well. So different platforms will work in different ways, and that's going to tell you how long you need to do the
so that's where you might need the agency, not only to help you understand where your audience is and selection of channels, but actually because people like us have experience with these different platforms.
Yeah.
We're not going to end up yeah, throwing the money down the toilet, so to speak.
Absolutely. Yeah, because you've got, and it can be really hard depending on different companies. It's like you've convinced your boss, yeah, let's try this thing on TikTok, let's see what it's about. And then you've got the budget, and then you prep all your campaign, and you do all your messaging, and you do everything, and then you run it and it's a flop. And it's like, oh. And also it's also about kind of trusting your gut sometimes. You're a marketer, just see around the psychology, and you should understand your audience. And if you feel like that this could work, just trying to follow your gut, and then if it doesn't work, it's understanding, well, why did it not work? Because I've had this situation before, and that's a good mention actually of the agency, because we use LinkedIn for a lot of our clients, and it works really well for B2B. We've had amazing results. And with one of my clients, it was like we were trying, we kept doing things and it wasn't working. And I was like, but I'm sure it can work, because I know it works for other clients. And then finally we found the content that was resonating, and it was basically, our targeting was fine. It was just that the content, we kept trying different bits of content, and some of it just didn't resonate and didn't work. And finally we unlocked, great, this is what people like. But that's the thing, if you don't have that, it can be quite hard to keep going, because it doesn't seem to be working. Is it just that the platform's not right? Whereas we see that with different businesses, so we know that it can work.
That, and I think you said something really important there. You want to learn from why it didn't work, as much as learning that it did work and why. Because in fact, if it works, you want to know why it worked, not just like, oh well, it worked, we'll just, that's
what worked.
great. You want to actually know, okay, it worked, why did it work, kind of thing. So just very briefly, you talked about the data, and you said make sure your data is good. Just briefly, a few pointers on what do you mean by that, because there are different views to the capturing of data, and I think we take a very thorough view at Innovation Visual, but tell us what you mean by that.
Well, it's making sure that all your tracking is set up correctly, you're using best practices. So things, I've seen a lot in my years at Innovation Visual, like sometimes, the tracking code isn't on all pages. So when you start sending, you've done all your budget and you're sending paid traffic, and then on this page, there's no tracking. So it's like, oh, so we've missed all of that. So it's just,
you're not talking about our mistakes here. You're talking about
no, and that's what we hear, and that's what we hear to stop this. So we've got like a list of best practice and checklist of like, we know what to look for and where to look. But just make sure that all your tracking is there. Make sure that on all these platforms you use the right UTM codes and the right tracking. So just having some codes on there so that you're sure that when it comes to your website, you'll know where it came from and then what people are doing on the website. Because again, there's nothing worse, you've put budget against something on paid advertising, and then you just can't tell whether it worked or not. It's horrible. So just
we'll put a link in the episode notes for UTM codes.
And I think we've got blogs on there, and we've just done a blog on GA4 as well, because I know everyone's
loving GA4. And I think the other thing is on the tracking, make sure you're tracking across all the platforms and all the tools, because I think whilst there is discrepancy between tools, tracking on something like HubSpot, and we're using HubSpot again for e-commerce and consumer, as well as for B2B clients. You're actually then getting revenue attribution from your experiment and test, whereas it might be that because of what's happening, you can't see in GA4 necessarily that particular person and the revenue attributed. Maybe there's a sales process afterwards and things like that, and they disappear. So I would say, the making sure you're tracking into, if you can, the system that will tell you the revenue, because not all leads are made equal, are they? So
absolutely, some will be worth way more, and that's a very good point about attribution. So when you need to decide which channels to invest in, please don't just look at these the channel reports in Google and then make a decision, because you could make very bad decisions based on that. And really, attribution is quite a complex subject, and we could do a whole session on this. But like these days, the touch points, when like the buying journey and the touch points of people, they're just completely erratic. They go everywhere. People will just go on loads of different browsers and devices to make a decision. So you can't just look at, where they came from originally or the last thing they clicked on, because it just doesn't represent a good picture. So you really need to have multi-touch attribution to make sure that you don't miss anything, because in most scenarios, right, people will be, I'll search for something organically, and then I'll click on this result, this organic result, I'll find a blog, I'll read about it, then forget. Then I'll get an ad. I'll click on this ad, and then I'll go away. And then I might do that several times. And then in the end, I might remember your website, or I've bookmarked it, so I go back directly.
Yeah.
If you look at last click attribution, it's like, oh my God, everyone knows us. Everyone's coming directly to our website.
Yeah.
How amazing. We don't need to do any marketing. And then you stop your marketing, and then no one's coming anymore.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's very dangerous to look at it in just one angle. So you really need to have a bigger picture.
That's where expert advice and help. I just made a note to make sure that we also link to the attribution information for those people that want more information on attribution, because I know we've got a lot of that in the knowledge base. Okay, so we've talked about that, and talked about the testing and things like that. In terms of like new channels, so, and when I'm talking about, let's say, probably more sub channels, areas within channels, so I'm thinking about things like threads, the new pretender, if you like, to Twitter, or the you can describe it how you want, but Meta's Twitter-esque platform. So that's now here. What would you say to people listening in terms of like channel decisions? Is the right thing to jump on early, be a fast, first mover, or is it better to wait, in your opinion? Or let me guess, does it depend?
It depends. It's always the answer, isn't it?
So what does it depend on then?
Well, again, it goes back to your audience. Like, it doesn't matter what channel is created, or if your audience isn't there, however much marketing you do, you're just not going to get any results. So it's like, is your audience, and I know it's not an easy question because Threads is brand new, so it's like, is your audience likely to go on there or not? Are they already on there? And people might think, well, how do you know that? Maybe you could survey your customers or your prospects. You could ask them, hey, have you been, are you on Threads and stuff like that? Or is it, what's the platform doing? So Threads, like you said, it's a bit like Twitter. So if your audience is already on Twitter, there might be good chances that they're going to try and go on Threads, and so then maybe that makes sense for you to be on there. Also, it's like, what's your audience like? Are they early adopters, or are they not? So are they likely to be on there? Yeah, exactly. Are they like, new shiny thing, I'm going to go on there.
So if they're an early adopter, then you need to be thinking more like an early adopter.
Absolutely.
Because they are likely to be on the newest things.
Yeah. Right. And again, what are, like, as a business as well, what are your values, or how do you present yourself? Are you an innovator? Are you an early adopter? And then if you are, then maybe, yes, it does make sense for you to go on Threads, because it's who you are as a business. So really just check. And usually these platforms, when they start doing advertising as well, they'll give you an idea of like who the audience is. So I know Pinterest do that a lot because they're trying to push for the advertising. So they'll give you loads of information on who are the people who use it. Obviously, Threads has just started, so they probably won't have a crazy amount, but they've already got millions of people on there. So as it
Be fast
goes,
taker.
yeah, they'll probably know who are on there. So yeah, I'd say, but again, it always goes back to the audience. Are they on there, and what are they doing on there as well? Can you market to them? There's also understanding the platform as well. So I know Threads, there were a few things where everyone started creating their account because it's really easy, because you can do from Instagram, but then they realized, oh, but then if I want to delete my Threads account, I've got to delete my Instagram, which is a bit difficult. There's also other thing I just thought about as well, around the strategy. So some platforms, you might actually want to secure the name.
Right. Yeah.
So your brand name. So it might actually be a good idea, if you're not too sure, oh, should I go or should I not? You can just try and secure the name so that no one else can take the brand name. And then you can probably leave it there, not do too much with it. And then if you decide, oh, I'm going to do it, then you can get it. It's like website domains and stuff like that. Just make sure you secure it.
Yeah. Okay. Then that makes a lot of sense. Okay. So, and in that you talked a lot about the human aspect, where where your audience is, the people, how they behave, what they're like. Jumping away from the human aspect, then going to the rise of the machines. So how do you see the impact of AI evolving, like the choice of channels and maybe some of those primary channels? How do you see those evolving? I don't know, you haven't got a crystal ball, but in the near future, what do you think are some things we should be looking out for?
I mean, yeah, channels is quite difficult, but definitely I think there's going to be a massive increase in noise, because with generative AI, you can create so much content so fast. So there's already quite a lot of information out there, but it's already happening. It's just going to flood, and you're going to have this flood of guff of just content that, and AI is really good and it can do really good content, but at the same time, it's all going to be the same stuff. It doesn't have this capacity yet to create new things. So it takes loads of information from different existing information to rehash it.
It's a recycler, not a net
and
creator.
So you imagine, all these marketers saying, oh, cool, I can create 10 blogs a day. It's like, who's going to ever read this? And how good is even this content going to be? So there's going to be a flood of loads of content there, not necessarily great quality. So what does that mean? These platforms are going to have to react, and Google's already on it. So organically, I know Google's looking at this, and expertise and experience. So it's the EEAT principles, looking at how are you an expert when you talk about this? Do you have actual experience of this? And that's why Google's done this, because Google's like, whoa, wait a minute, all this AI stuff, that's going to really change everything. So yeah, just basically, when you look at content, wherever you're going to push your content, you're going to have to be creative. You're going to have to be different, because everything else is going to be the same, and it's going to be a mass of the same stuff. So you really need to think not necessarily on the channel, but yes, how are you unique? How are you providing unique opinions? How are you different? And then on these different channels, how are you pushing it against the rest? And that's where the human side, you're gonna have to be way more creative. You're gonna have to be inventive, because everyone's going to do the same stuff. So you're going to have to think, oh, my ads are going to have to go up a notch. I'm going to have to be a bit weird, or or do something different.
I think we've already been talking to some clients about being good isn't good enough anymore. You've got to be better. You've got to be great or better.
Absolutely.
Good is no good now. That's really interesting. Okay.
But I think there's going to be also, so obviously the noise, but also mistrust, because people know, they're not stupid. They can see that stuff is being done with AI now. But you're starting to see these people being like, oh, look at this picture that's been created from AI, and look at this, and so you've got this great Netflix show about like this AI show being created from this person's life, you know, and people are seeing that, people are watching these shows, and they're gonna be, oh, wait a minute, is that, you know, what I'm reading, what I'm seeing, is that true? You know, is this real Tim, real Clotilde talking to me right now?
Yeah. Well, that's it. I mean, it's interesting because people have said to us, well, you know, you're doing this digital marketing answered. Can't you get it all written by AI? And it's like, well, I don't think it would be the same. Maybe I'm wrong down the line, but I think it's the quality of the thought that goes in.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen that Black Mirror one, and it's from the previous seasons where it's the things like the rating thing where the person got down rated and I think that the without going into a series review or whatever, the thing which makes Black Mirror so engaging is that it's so close to where we are that people look at it and they go, right, okay, it could happen. And so I get what you mean about this mistrust thing. And I think that there's another element to it in terms of general trust in society. You look at where the trends of trust have gone, you know, and particularly from, you know, the COVID era and, you know, conversations that people have, and, you know, people have, you know, they've got their opinions on what's right and what's wrong. And they're absorbing a lot of this information from online sources. And I think that the trust in general is a rare thing now. So I suppose, for a brand,
absolutely,
back to the question, channels, you need to think about, if you're going to be engaging with a channel, you do need to be authentic as well. So you might think, let's just nail this organic thing and we'll just throw content at it, which, you know, there are a lot of opinions about what will rank and what won't rank over time. But you could end up ranking, but you could end up destroying consumer trust because you've abused the channel and you've abused consumers' time and attention.
Yeah, and that's a great point. Actually, you've abused the channel. That's going back to my point. Okay, is your audience on the channel, but also what are they doing and why are they on there? Because you really need to tune your content based on why they're here. So it's a simple example, but I don't know, if you sell like funny socks, you're probably not going to go and do that on LinkedIn, because people don't go on LinkedIn to buy funny socks. Like, it might work on Pinterest, but or, you know, on LinkedIn, you might want to do something about how you created your business with funny socks and how you're managing it and stuff like that. And that's a different angle. But it's probably not the best idea to buy.
Yeah, it's like I see sometimes B2B brands selling something incredibly dull, and I see them on Facebook, and you think, but your audience might be on Facebook, but they've come to Facebook for light relief. They want to get away from work. Do they really want to see your thing about, I don't know, the latest data gizmo blah? You know, when actually what they're doing is they're scrolling through the feed because they want to see what their friends are up to and what people that they know are doing. And that's the mindset disconnect. Time is marching on. I know the answer to the question is it depends, but in terms of, if you had to do a quick, like, are there some channels which are more effective for different types of businesses? Can you give any kind of general guidance, with the caveat that it depends? But so for those people that are time poor and don't necessarily want to engage, but they just want to get on and do something after watching this,
go and do it. I mean, organic and email, like I said, they work for everyone. To me, they're the must-have channels. They really work, and when you do it well, they really work really well, and they can get you amazing results. So I'm going
to interrupt by saying they work really well as long as you've got good content.
Yes.
So that's the caveat.
Absolutely. And you have to do it well, and but they can really transform, you know, your business and your revenue. Then we were talking, so B2B lead gen, I said earlier, LinkedIn can work really well. It's really good for targeting as well. So if you do some paid ads on LinkedIn, that's very niche and narrow, because Google can be difficult. Google ads, it can work well, but I think these days, because of all the AI, it works better for like bigger businesses, so things with more data, basically. So if you're a niche business, it can be quite hard to kind of find, like, get the revenue.
Whereas when we were doing this 5+ years ago, actually niche businesses, you could really nail it on.
You could really,
you could do just learning stuff, couldn't you? Yeah,
but it doesn't work as well these days because the AI needs the data to optimize. So if you don't have enough data, it's going to be much harder. So B2B lead gen, I've said LinkedIn, and then B2C e-commerce. I think Facebook is still really good. It's not as cheap as it used to be, but it can get some good results. Google ads as well, you know, if you're an e-commerce, again, if you've got enough data, this Performance Max campaign, we have seen really good results from it. So if you're like B2C, that can work well. Video, so like YouTube, that can do wonders as well.
TikTok and Instagram as well, depending on your audience, what your audience are.
Exactly.
Really good places to put your video.
And TikTok is an interesting one because it's still new enough that it's still cheap and you can go viral really fast as well. So that's the appeal to the brands. It's like, oh wow, I can get all this really quickly and, you know, for quite cheap, compared to things like Facebook and LinkedIn and Google, where they're quite mature now, so it's quite expensive to, as soon as you want anything.
Absolutely. Really. Okay. No, that's good guidance. So I suppose we should wrap it up with, you know, in terms of the channels, you know, have we answered the question, what channels should people invest in to get the best digital marketing results? It depends isn't necessarily the answer, but what should be the things that people should be thinking about so they can actually answer that question specifically, because it can be answered specifically for each and every company, because this is what we do day in, day out. So just if you want to wrap up, kind of summarize what you said, that would be great.
That it's just following this process. So first you have to review performance, so check performance of each of your channels, make sure you've got the right data in place, look at attribution, just to make sure you're looking at everything, you know, as a whole, holistically. So what's working, what's not working, where are we getting the revenue, where are we not getting the revenue? Then look at your audience, so make sure you understand who you're selling to, and then what are they expecting from each channel. So are there any channels where it's not currently working for you, but actually because your audience is there, it should be, and so then you can start having a look at that? Or are there any other channels that you're not investing in, but your audience is there, so you might be able to do that? And from that, be logical. So like I said, you know, Pinterest, LinkedIn, they're very different channels, so just be logical and think logically, you know, the psychology behind it. And then we've talked about experiments as well, so keep some budget for experimenting. Make sure you've got that so you can test, and make sure you gather enough data on your tests as well. And then don't jump on the latest trend, just think it through, be strategic about it, and don't be like, oh, this new shiny thing, I'm going to go and see what it's like.
It might be right for you, but you need to do a proper evaluation, not just because other people. Just
think it through and just make sure you understand it, and then from that, get experts as well. If you know, you might not have experts in all these channels, and especially if they're new, just, you know, get the experts to help you to understand it, so that you don't waste that experimentation budget as well.
Because spending some money on paying for an expert to get things right could be a lot cheaper than either not, you know, wasting your media budget or wasting your investment in the wrong areas, whether it be media or whether it be going down the wrong road with things like organic. But also the other thing is, I think that one of the hidden costs of not using the right expertise is when people go down the wrong route, or they just don't move forward as fast. And actually, the real cost of that is their competitors are getting those sales. Their competitors are getting those new clients. The competitors are, you know, landing those leads and filling their pipeline. And it's okay to say, well, we're doing okay here and we're saving some money, but actually you could be giving away loads more revenue to your competitors because you didn't actually have some expertise to help you do the right thing.
Yeah. And then it's much harder to get these people back from your competitors. Yes. They've already chosen. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Well, I think that's been super interesting. Really
it was good. A good chat.
Yeah. And yeah, really good to catch up. Hopefully everybody watching and listening have found it useful. I'm hoping very much that they have, and they're going to like, subscribe, sign up for notifications, all of that good stuff, depending on the platform that they're on. And yeah, and also if this is the first one of the Digital Marketing Answered that you might have watched or listened to, please do check out the back catalogue. There's a lot of interesting knowledge there, hopefully, that you will benefit from. So Clotilde, thank you very much for being on.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
And yeah, for all those people watching and listening, thank you for your time to spare it with us. Thanks very much.